and said, "Hey, Dan, I want you to commit to 3 years of doing a podcast with me and a stranger."
Figure no matter how old I get, I'm always going to use the toilet, and I'd like to be able to stand up off of it by myself. Exactly. Nobody wants their balls to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people, sure, but...
Welcome back to Off the Air, where you may hear a hammer banging upstairs because my neighbor is getting something remodeled. Hey.
Okay.
Imagine not Thursday, Friday night, they were trying to, I think they were having issues taking out a toilet or putting back a toilet. But regardless, I got a text at 10 p.m. saying we should be done using power tools really soon. However, at between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., I was woken up several times.
Damn.
by hammering.
That sucks. I feel bad because they knew what they were doing, but they had to finish whatever they were working on before they could go to bed. Like if it was
that is the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't be like, well, I'm just gonna leave your toilet uninstalled. I'll see you tomorrow or Sunday. You can't do that, and I get that.
You can't just not have a toilet.
But man,
also, what if you could?
That.
What's really interesting though is I think it was Thursday night. Me and Becca were woken up by the sounds of a car radio outside our window, playing either a talk show or a podcast or something, like just ungodly loud at like 5 a.m.
That is like the beginning of a horror movie. Like
right?
I don't like that's creepy.
Really weird.
That's creepy.
Yeah, it's just like
semi relevant. I just watched fucking Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last night or 2 nights ago for the first time.
Oh, nice.
And
I've heard good things.
There's a scene where essentially something similar happens, and it kicks off the last like quarter of the movie. And so I was like, damn, that's just a weird coincidence. Sorry. Totally not relevant to your story. Let me just come in and tell you how my story isn't even a good story, nor is it relevant to your story.
I really like how that served a wonderful purpose of just derailing the flow of the conversation and really nothing else.
I'm so sorry.
Really
amazing.
Listen, I apologize for myself. I apologize for the people that I've hurt on the way down. I apologize for the people.
Enough of that. We got Jeff here today. Say hello to Jeff, everybody.
Woo!
No, Jeff, not you. It's everyone says hi to you, and then you say hi back.
I thought it was kind of like,
give him a second.
Everybody's cheering and applauding, and then I'm like, running down the aisle and high-fiving people.
Oh, you're thinking more like you're the guest on a talk show, like a proper talk show, like a real actual piece of content. Oh, I got bad
I'm
news
just
for you.
imagining some like type of music playing while Jeff just is dancing around the room, and we are increasingly less patiently waiting for him to finally get his ass on stage so that we can ask him our hard-hitting questions of, so Jeff, in your time in the sandblasting industry, have you ever noticed blatant sandblasting in the workplace?
I don't like where that one can go.
So I would hope that there's sandblasting happening in my workplace. It's my job.
Well, what would you do then if we played this clip right here and then I show a picture of Jeff taking meme photos instead of sandblasting?
Oh no.
Curses, you've discovered my horror. My horrible failures. You've caught me in the act.
I did that on my lunch break, though.
What a day. What a day. But yeah, that terrible transition to, I wanted to ask Jeff about steroids, and I didn't really have a good transition to get to that because I blew the transition when when upstairs started hammering, and I'm like, okay. Well, I don't want to. I wanted to address that, and instead of being like, "Welcome to Off the Air," where we're going to talk about steroids. So yeah, Jeff, steroids.
What
do you think of
steroids?
Haven't tried them.
Have you tried them? What do you think? What are the best ones?
I mean, you have plenty of people on your Instagram.
I have been offered them in a way.
I'm sorry. You're gonna.
Okay, so I got a text from. I got a text from one of my friends that I work out with sometimes, right? A couple of months ago. And he's like, hey, I got the hookup for some D-ball for like $120 for a 3-week cycle of it.
What is D-ball?
And Diana ball. It's a one of the first.
I'm sorry. Is it perhaps a steroid?
Okay. Well, I knew it was, but I've never heard D-ball before, so I figured I would ask for, myself and other stupid listeners.
Diana ball. Was it $120 for a 3-week cycle or $60 for a 3-week cycle? And he wanted to do 2. Essentially, though, I got a text from my friend basically saying, hey, do you want to buy steroids and do a cycle with me? And we'll see what happens. And I was like, I don't know.
Amazing.
And he's like 10 years older than me. So it's like, that kind of stuff is a little bit more on the table for him, I suppose, in a lot of ways. But I'm kind of like, I haven't gotten anywhere near reaching my potential yet. I don't want to start cheating yet,
Yet.
If you consider it cheating, of course, there's
I feel
plenty
like
of discussion about that.
I feel like if you are in a, we'll get to the division talk later. But if you're competing in
if you're in an
region,
organized sport where you're not allowed to do it, then obviously yes, that is cheating. Yeah, but
if you're just doing it for the fun of it,
yeah, he's not planning on competing in like anything.
He just wants to get
at this
bigger.
point.
He
just wants to get jacked, and
I actually respect that
there.
so much. He's just like, fuck it, dude. I just want to get swole as fuck.
Yeah, in that kind of a situation, it's like, sure. Yeah, just do it.
That's so good.
Go for it. I don't see what's wrong with it. I do think it should be legal so that it can be, like, regulated.
That's so
good. No, that makes sense.
We can have some more, like, actual studies on them and get better information on optimal serving sizes, figure out what's dangerous so people can do it, like, safely.
You mean without making their balls fall off?
Exactly. Nobody wants their balls to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people, sure, but chances are,
statistically, not
to get more jacked, you probably want to hold on to them.
Oh God,
one would assume.
The chances are good. Anyway, though, so powerlifting, right?
Yeah, powerlifting. Let's go. What do you got?
Yeah, so. Just to catch our listeners up on the conversation that we were having beforehand, vigilant listeners of the show will remember a couple of weeks ago when they mentioned in passing the concept that the Olympics or sports federations should have a division where athletes are just allowed to do whatever performance enhancing drugs that they want and just see what the real potential of human achievement is if you're allowed to do those sorts of things. And that's an idea that gets kicked around as a joke a lot. And I'm extremely entertained by that because it is literally the way that powerlifting works. Is there are a lot of different federations and governing bodies, but some of them are designated as tested federations and others are designated as untested federations, which literally means exactly what it sounds like. It's, some of them will test you for steroids and others will just not do that. And actually, there's more division in the sport than that because powerlifting, for any of our listeners or co-hosts who might be unaware, the sport of powerlifting consists of the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. And that is the whole thing. It's just those 3 things. Whoever lifts the largest cumulative amount of weight over the course of those 3 lifts wins the competition, basically.
Okay.
And since it's so specific, there are an absolute ton of seemingly kind of small factors that can make an absolutely massive difference in the lift. And there's a lot of assistive equipment that has been developed over the years of the sport. And the answer that the governing bodies and federations of the sport had to that was basically just to put them into separate divisions. How every couple of years you hear about some company developing a new Speedo or something that makes swimmers break records easier, and suddenly a ton of records get broken and the governing bodies of the sport have to decide whether or not they're going to let people keep wearing these things and whether they're going to count all those new records.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Speedo specifically.
Exactly. Yeah. You just got to wrap that dong in a different way and it becomes more aerodynamic.
As you do.
Last year when
that was the tagline, actually, wrap that dong for the aerodynamics.
Or what was it last year when Eliud Kipchoge ran that world record marathon and everyone immediately was like, well, but it's because he was wearing these new bouncy shoes that Nike had just produced. So like we can't really count it as an official world record. And, you know, there was all of that when that happened.
Yes, definitely know about that. Me who watches all the sport.
Of course, yes.
But go on. Please don't let my lack of knowledge derail you. Please, not again.
So basically the way that powerlifting reacted to that kind of issue was just to be like, well, all right, there's just a new division that allows that form of assistive equipment. And here we still have this division that doesn't allow any of that. So like there are there are like squat suits, deadlift suits, and bench shirts that you wear that are essentially just really tight, like elasticy kind of stuff that like, you know, makes you rebound up out of the bottom of the lift better.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's referred to as equipped lifting. That's the biggest rift in powerlifting other than tested versus untested. It's equipped versus raw lifting. But there's like 3 or 4 different kinds of raw lifting when you get into that as well, because you've got raw with like knee wraps, and then some federations make a distinction between wearing knee sleeves and not being allowed to wear knee sleeves as well, even though sleeves don't really give you a whole lot of rebound out the bottom at all, depending on which ones you're wearing, of course. But yeah, basically the way that the sport has reacted to the idea of, just any kind of assistive equipment or, you know, anything that can make a difference in your performance has been just to be like, well, okay, you can do that, but over here.
You can do it not here right now.
I do like that idea.
And I think that's a really good way to address that kind of thing. And I mean, also, you know, unfortunately, it means that there's like 500,000 different world records to hold.
Oh, what a problem. There's so many. Where am I going to put all my world records?
There's just so many world records that you can reach, because there's like, you know, you've got tested, untested, equipped, raw with wraps, raw without wraps, raw with sleeves, all of this. And you've got one of those on every single lift in every single weight class. And powerlifting weight classes are like pretty close to every 10 pounds. It's all in like kilograms, so it doesn't match up perfectly, but
that's so interesting. I would have never thought that drugs are like, when you talk performance enhancing stuff, drugs are the obvious like thing that I think everyone thinks. I literally would have never thought about like the clothes you wear and shit. But I guess also I'm
same
not
here. Like Jeff's out here talking about like the special dick holders, and I'm like, I guess that might help sometimes, I suppose. And then they're just like,
historically has.
Yeah, that's
it's just like, and here we go.
Why swimmers shave themselves down to be sleek like a seal,
like a dolphin. Yeah. Well, and actually, speaking of dick holders, actually in raw lifting, they have regulations on the kind of underwear that you can wear.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're not allowed to wear boxers. You have to wear briefs. The specific language in the rule is you can't wear any kind of underwear that has a leg.
Oh,
interesting.
Because potentially, if they allow people to wear underwear that has legs, they could wear something that has like a stronger elastic going down the back something to help bounce you out the bottom of a squat or a deadlift.
You know what? That makes sense.
It does, and I never...
And if they think that you're wearing the wrong underwear...
They will check.
A judge or a ref will literally take you into a closet and make you show them. Because that is part of the sport, is that's regulated.
Amazing. You know, I remember watching when, what's his name? You sent the live stream from Twitch to the family group chat.
Oh, yeah, Hafthor.
Hafthor. And I'm watching this man with heavily tattooed shins. Tearing his shins up by just scraping them with this heavy bar. And I'm like, unrelated to any of the conversation we've just had, I'm just looking at that thinking, why would you get that tattooed?
See, here's the thing. Usually, when you see guys pulling, real big deadlifts and stuff, and especially guys like Hafthor, who is, for our listeners' benefit, anybody who doesn't know who Hafthor Bjornsson is, he's the guy who played the Mountain on Game of Thrones.
I was gonna say, I actually do know who he is.
Yeah, and he was the world's strongest man in 2018.
Don't know why I knew that, but
yeah, he is a real big deal in the strongman world. Has been for a long while, though he is kind of out of the sport right now for a weird set of reasons. But anyway, yeah, normally you see guys like him who deadlift with that really wide stance, wearing something to cover their shins, whether it's like, high socks or just a pad that you wear on your shins or something.
Mm-hmm. Something
but
to not scrape your
I think he wasn't
skin.
wearing them. Right, because the bar has all that knurling on it, and it's real rough to help you grip it. But I think the reason that he wasn't wearing any of that for that particular lift was just so that he could get the bar closer to his body, because that's a really big thing in deadlifting, is you want to keep it as close to your body's natural center of gravity as possible, because that's how you have the best leverage.
Makes sense.
I love the fact that you get to that level of competition, right? And then you have people who are literally just like, even a thin sock is too thick. Body hair makes sense, right? Because body hair stacks up.
Right.
But even just a thin sock is too thick for him in that situation. He wanted...
Because he had to be sure. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Also, the biggest deadlifters always do it. You might have noticed he wasn't wearing shoes.
I did notice,
when you get up to that
throw
level,
me off.
When you get up to that level, they don't wear shoes because they want to get as close to the ground as possible, because if you are set lower, the deadlift is easier.
I love it.
Wild.
It seems like insane, such a cult.
Right?
It is. Oh, all sports are cults.
Absolutely. It is completely insane. They are all crazy people, and I love it.
every single sport or organization or group or art, doesn't matter. It becomes a cult the higher up you get into it. It just does.
Oh, it is really just insane. But I mean, that's the thing. You get to the top, and like you can't get to the top without being just a little bit too into it,
Wild.
The best kind of.
I love that.
It. I'm not gonna lie. I also love it a lot.
I just enjoy the fact that there is a world where they were like, oh yeah, people really like cheating. We'll make the cheaters bracket. That's fine.
Yeah.
that is literally the answer. They said, fuck it. You guys want to cheat so bad. Here, go cheat, you dummies.
Yeah. Equipped lifting is an absolute free-for-all, and the people who do it are even more insane than everybody else in the sport. Anytime, if you get the chance, watch a documentary about like West Side Barbell. I think there's one on Netflix right now. It's called West Side versus the World.
Mm-hmm.
It'll give you a great idea of how absolutely insane equipped lifters are, because I don't think that any equipped lifting federation tests. I think they are all untested. So that means equipped lifting is essentially just an absolute free for all.
Wild.
Like, you do whatever you want as long as it's going to help you move more weight. You just do it. It is ridiculous. They are absolutely insane people.
It also sounds like a really easy thing to like completely ruin every part of your body on.
If you do it wrong, yeah. And a lot of them do.
As established, your balls can and will fall off
up pretty badly just by, lifting with weird form to try and improve leverage just that much more. Mm-hmm. And they are aware of how it's going to mess their joints up in the long term, but they want to break that record. So they are like okay with it for whatever reason. Now that I cannot relate to.
That's horrifying. Very cool. Very horrifying.
Yeah. That kind of thing scares me a lot. I want to be able to walk when I'm older. So
why? What are you gonna do when you're older? You dummy. Walking? I don't think so, sir.
I don't know. I figure no matter how old I get, I'm always going to use the toilet, and I'd like to be able to stand up off of it by myself.
You know what? I respect that goal. That's a good goal to have.
I think it's a pretty
is that your that's your like when they ask, all right, You're getting a little older, Jeff. We need to know. We want to know what your wishes are. At what point should we not keep trying to keep you alive? When I can't
when
get
I
off
can't
the
stand up off a toilet by myself, just take me out back and shoot me. I'm done.
I respect that as a border. I respect that so much as like, this is my line in the sand. I will go this far and no further. It's very good. I am fascinated by this. I'm not gonna lie. I understand very little because how could I? But I am extremely fascinated.
It's a weird thing to look into as an outsider, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really strange because it's just like, well, you're just
lifting things. You're just picking things up and putting them
up heavy shit. I mean,
I pick things up and I put them down.
I mean, as a person who's not into it, it looks really dumb. And actually, like, even up until like last year, as a guy who lifted a lot and really enjoyed lifting a lot, I thought strongman was the really cool thing, and I still kind of thought powerlifters were just kind of dumb.
Wild.
Because it's like, well, benching sucks, squatting is cool, and all deadlifting is cool, but like, I don't want to hate 1/3 of my sport, man.
I just don't. I want to like everything about my sport. If I hate 1/3 of it, that's it.
But then I grew to like benching a little bit more, and I was like, hey, you know what? I got to commit to something. I'm never going to be able to get good at strongman because I don't have access to a lot of that stuff, and the competitions are so much harder to find. So I was like, I want to commit to something, find my real potential by really dialing in on it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get really good at powerlifting.
I respect it. I respect it a lot.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get into my first competition like later this year or something.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
I expect to lose very badly, but I think it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. I love that. Good luck and all that.
Yeah,
we'll have you come on after and do a post.
So Jeff, how's the pooping? Can you still stand up?
I can still poop. Great news, guys.
See you guys.
I pooped this morning. It went great. Stood up without any issues. We don't talk about the competition at all. It's just the fact that it happened and I can still poop.
That, to be fair, extremely on brand for us. Like, as a group, true. That is extremely on brand.
It fits.
You know what else is extremely on brand for us, though?
What's that?
Complaining about things that we're not actually involved in.
Okay.
And I've got something I've been exposed to recently, and I just need to ask your opinions, okay?
Okay.
So now, Jeff, I know you haven't played D&D, but I think that you're versed enough in like acting and stuff, or improv at the very least.
We could get I think game at some point.
Dan, I was going to get to you in a minute. Calm down.
I've been like meaning to off and on for literally years. I've just never quite found the time at the same time that like I knew people who were looking for a party. You know?
All right, sorry, no, go ahead and continue.
And Dan, I know you play a lot of D&D. Now shut up.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
That means that
I only have one game now.
Because on this show, we talk about things that we don't understand.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, here's my thing, right? So it's, you know, the sign of like a fantastic, great DM is being able to roll with the punches. Like, that's kind of a given. Everyone kind of knows that, right? But like, one thing that really gets to me is sometimes I want to be railroaded, right? Sometimes I want my DM to tell me what's going on. And I'm not in a game right now. And this is not about any of my past games.
This is not
about D&D podcasts, actually, like in general. I've listened to a few D&D podcasts now, right? And like, yeah, the joke is always everyone's trying to be Critical Role.
Which, I mean, it's fair.
You know what? It's an admirable goal. But here's the thing:
some are trying to be the Adventure Zone, also. Though,
that's true.
Those assholes that try to be Adventure Zone, the bastards.
They'll never make it in this town. Never.
But like, and I think it is dead commendable to want to live up to what you think a perfect D&D game is. And a lot of people think that like Critical Role and Adventure Zone are the quintessential D&D experiences, right?
Sure. And that's an admirable goal in any pursuit. You should want to be the best that you can be.
Yeah.
Now, here's my problem though. What people always seem to not realize is how scripted those things are. And they're not scripted down to the word.
Really?
No, there's a lot of work going into it. Like Critical Role, they are all actors and like performers playing D&D.
Yeah.
You know? So you have Matt Mercer out here with his grand plan, but the events that are happening, like core story beats, it's scripted out. Sometimes you'll get to a point where something will happen. Like one of Nina's favorite stories is that the party had the MacGuffin with them, and Matt was prepared for a total party kill. And the players are like, but what if I used the MacGuffin? And he's like, well, session's over. I have no idea what to do with this. I was not prepared. So we're going to end this week early and we'll come back next time, you know, like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I
think you need to clarify scripted, because it is definitely not.
Well, yeah, that is what I'm clarifying.
Okay.
So like scripted in the sense of the story arc is planned out, which
yes.
Like
everyone's aware of it. Everyone's on the same beat as far as like
exactly. Most D&D games, the DM will have your full story sketched out, not finished, but like here's A, here's B, here are the points I want to sit in the middle. You know,
here's where we're headed. Here's what's going on. What's going to be happening. You should be aware of. Hey, this is a thing that will probably happen, and you should know about it.
Exactly. Like not down to the conversations, not down to the interactions. But there's a lot of scripting going on, and the players know about it. Mm-hmm. And that's the big important catch. And I've come across a lot of D&D games of people of like varying experience, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's very clear that that's what they're trying to do, but they're trying to do it without telling their players.
Yeah.
And without communicating that stuff well.
Just real quick, when you say the players are aware of it, do you mean that like they're aware that there is a plan, or they're aware of what the entire plan is?
They will
not
be
the
aware
entire
of
plan, but there will be like a rundown before their session of, hey, there's some things
even if not
that
the
are
session,
happening.
like before the game, like there's a sequence of varying degrees of knowledge. Like sorry, go ahead and finish your story, Cap, but I can talk about Cap's game real quick when we
and that'll be a fantastic example as well, because you guys had a very good idea of where your game was going, right?
Within reason.
Not a very good. Exactly. And that's the catch, is within reason. Mm-hmm. Your average D&D game is a within reason game.
Yeah.
Maybe even less information is also okay, if depending on the style of the group, right?
Yeah.
However, if your Critical Role, if you're Adventure Zone, you're a product. You are being produced to be consumed. You know,
right.
This is not
meant to be entertainment.
Exactly. This is not a off the cuff, spur of the moment thing. Obviously, those things can still happen. There are still moments that will catch every single person in the room off guard.
And those are the best.
However,
that's what you live for as a GM and as a player. Is
yeah. It's like you're like,
nothing
oh my
more
gosh,
satisfying than shit.
They pulled one over on me.
Exactly.
And once again, within reason, you don't want to be the shithole player who's just like, ha 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 ha, look at me and my rule book, you know?
Well, and it's so like for Cap's game, right? Cap's game, I've been playing in the same D&D game, the one D&D game that is consistent, for 6 years. We're going into year 7, I think, in summer. And we are past the halfway point, but we probably have another 3 years of this game to go. I think we're actually taking a hiatus as soon as we get past this story arc, because the GM is just a little burnt out. But
is Cap the GM, or is it someone else?
Cap's the GM, yeah. I have Cap and I talked years ago about, hey, the story is broad strokes, a 5-act structure. Here are here's the end point that you are careening towards. We are essentially figuring out how you get there, and if something wild changes, we will change it. But at this moment, this is what you are going towards. This is what broad strokes you are working towards on a week to week. Like, we'll get like, hey, you guys remember where we left off last week? We're working on this thing this week. Like, not to the point where we know how the conversations are going to go, or even how it will end up that day or week. But we know where we have a fate, for lack of a better word, that we are careening towards as a party. And we could theoretically deviate from it if we were like, fuck this, we're going home. But that just means that there's no game. Like, at that point, there's no game to play.
Exactly. That's another thing. Also, it's no fun to have that player that acts like they don't want to be on the adventure. Just go home and stop ruining everyone else's good time.
Oh, yeah.
This is
I
a
don't
call out
understand that at
post
all.
for someone I played with once who forced us every session to try and keep him there. It's not funny, dude. It's not good story. It's just hard on everyone else and not a good time.
It's not even a good character. Like it's just boring.
No, it's not even a good character. It's just rough for everyone else, and it makes it an uncomfortable session.
Yep.
It sucks.
Yeah, I've heard about that kind of thing before, and every time I'm just like, well, why would you play the game if that's the way that you're going to do it?
Mhm.
Because they want, it's a selfish thing. They want to make the story about them. They want everyone to tell them week in, week out, oh, you're so important to the party. We need you here, blah, blah, blah. And like,
it's like the issue with the chosen one stereotype where it's like, well, yeah, it's a played out stereotype, but it's never all in the same universe. And it's a very convenient way to make someone, because a protagonist of a story is never going to be a boring individual. There's always going to be a reason that they woke up that day and chose violence. You know, like all this to say, you know, if just remember, if you're doing a D&D game for a podcast versus D&D for fun, you have to have a higher level of communication with your people. And if we're being honest, I feel like you need to be willing to bend some rules.
Oh, 100%.
Because sometimes you do fun things and you got to let fun things happen. Other times you got to be like, hey, I'm sorry. The rules will not allow you to do that. And there's a good reason for it, right? But then other times it's like, you can stretch it a little bit.
You to do that, but I sure as hell will. Let's go.
Exactly. You know, like there's a time and place to throw the rule book, and it's a very important thing to know the rules of the game. Don't break them more than you have to. However, sometimes it's not that important to hardline some rules.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's also like, so I've listened to a modern amount of D&D podcasts. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't love the Adventure Zone and I don't love Critical Role. Like those just aren't my jam. I watched Critical Role for a while, then stopped. Stopped actually like in the middle of a major plot beat because I'm like, wow, I'm not enjoying this right now.
I mean, sometimes you realize you just don't like a story arc.
Yeah.
That said, I think that there is also like there's a certain amount of trust that I feel like a lot of players don't necessarily have for their GM. I think that is also a problem with D&D podcasts, is that you have to be like every single person there. The job is not to even necessarily have a good time playing the game. Like that is important, don't get me wrong, and that is literally why you're there playing the game. But the job is actually to make good content. And part of that is your enjoyment. Like you will enjoy the game more if you're making good content and vice versa. But your job is to make good content first and foremost. And if you're not doing your job, your game is going to fail. There are plenty of D&D podcasts out there that will only do like a couple of sessions. There are plenty of D&D podcasts off the air. Wow. Off the air D&D podcasts. No, One Shot, the podcast that I used to listen to a lot. The whole reason that they had a cycling cast was because trying to do a single game for a very long time is a lot of work and a lot of commitment that not everyone always has.
Oh, it's a huge, if I approached you almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, and said, hey, Dan, I want you to commit to 3 years of doing a podcast with me and a stranger, would you have said yes?
I mean, I wouldn't have said yes, I'm going to commit to it, but if you're doing it, but like where you're going with this is that if you're doing a D&D podcast, that is you are making day one.
Like, hey, look, we're here 2.5 years later. Boy, howdy, we did it. But if I were to sit down and be like, Dan, I want a weekly commitment from you for our podcast. And it's going to be an episode or maybe bi-weekly. I think a lot of D&D podcasts are bi-weekly.
Well, yeah, and that's also a conversation here about production value too, which is its own like wild, crazy thing that's impossible to even like. Production value makes or breaks a podcast as well, and in a way
that's
like
podcasts
really
in general. I have so many opinions about poorly produced podcasts because like there's a bare minimum that you have to reach, and if you can't make it so everyone is all audible at the same time, but you also. Like, because there's player management or like speaking management of you need to make sure you're not actively talking over people, right? And then there's editor management where it's like, well, if people are talking over each other too much, I guess I'm going to have to pull someone out of the mix. That happened to a podcast that I was listening to early in their stuff where they were like, yeah, so we were really bad about this. And I just started muting people or pulling them down. And we talked about it beforehand, and eventually it worked. Jeff's idea to fix it for us over at Casual Obsession was we video call so that we can see who's talking. It works. Like, there's ways that you can make that part better. And like, if you have everyone audible, you don't have that nasty, like, massive background hum of someone microwaving in the background or something, you know, like someone's not eating chips into the mic.
I feel attacked.
Then you're good. When do you eat chips into the mic?
Every week, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel so attacked.
Right. Well, I mean, also a very underrated thing is just that, like, the ability to allow everyone to say whatever they're trying to say without everyone just talking over everyone else is like a skill that the group has to develop together.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people don't really realize that. I know I didn't realize it until we started recording consistently.
It is also the group specific. Yeah. Like you said, it is definitely you have to very much kind of like when we record with Jackson, Noah and I are very capable of letting Jackson just go, right? Like, it's easy to sit back and let Jackson kind of take the reins for a while. But the rhythm that we've built up is that when one of us does talk, usually Jackson has got, well, not usually, always, Jackson's gotten really, really good at just, hey, someone else is talking, let me slow down my role for a few minutes.
Either that or we just straight up interrupt someone and say, hey, shut up, that's stupid. And then you start
I'm gonna say
you mean like we did like 2 minutes ago?
Change the subject now.
Hey, shut up, that's stupid anyway.
Enough about steroids and powerlifting. Let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, listen, there's performance enhancing Dungeons and Dragons, I'm sure. I don't know what it would be, but it's something.
Is there?
It's called cocaine, Daniel.
Or weighted dice is where I kind of was going with that. But yeah, that too.
Oh, that's a biggie. Have you ever listened to a D&D podcast where people roll their dice in person and they're using a mic that's on their table?
I have. It does not bother me as much.
Oh, so it's like, all right, I got to roll for my attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's so loud.
12.
It's so painfully loud.
I think it definitely depends on that. That goes back to the mixing and production value thing, because I actually really love hearing like dice clatter.
Dice clatter is good, but dice clatter when it's your mic is on a tripod in front of you and then you roll your dice that almost hit your mic stand, that's bad.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got to make sure that the mic is picking up the sound through the air and not through the table.
Yeah, that's a biggie for me.
Yeah, that's very.
But I hate dirty mic sound. I like having clean mics. And while dice sounds are very pleasant and good to hear,
they can
dice table sounds are not pleasant and good to hear.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also a thing that like is also difficult to kind of build up and learn about, is like knowing the limits of your mic. Like for the longest time, before the podcast, I had my mic on a stand or on like it. I use a Blue Yeti. I have for years. I had it on its like built-in stand. But the fact is that if I'm doing that, it's going to destroy the mic. Or if I adjust myself and move my table at all, it's going to destroy my mic. And so putting it on an actual arm is huge. It's if I rolled, I have dice. Where'd my die go? I was gonna say I have dice behind me. I can roll them on my desk and it'll sound fine because I'm not on my desk, and it'll be picking up the sound from rolling, not the sound from, like you said, not the sound through the desk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Minor things.
It's little things.
Mic etiquette is another one of those really important skills that everybody just needs to learn as they use a microphone. Because so many people don't understand how mics work.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it's different. There are podcasts out there that do like on a professional microphone set. Like if I had a professional, everyone sitting around one table with a bunch of mics pointing in different directions, you can kind of get away with that a lot more because you can really dial it on one specific voice per microphone, and it doesn't matter as much if you mute your mic because no one else will be able to hear you anyway if you're talking not into your microphone. But online, which is what a lot of our podcasts are, especially these days with COVID, but also in general with our podcast, muting your mic is huge. It's the tiniest thing that can make the biggest difference.
Or just knowing where to talk into your mic. I did a whole video about this for this D&D talk. I'm about to segue into talking about Emma for a hot second. This is not about Emma.
Yeah,
and
none
the
of this was
D&D
about
podcast
Emma.
she had been planning.
And working
I
on the
need
one
to-
she's active,
well,
the group she's actually
yeah.
actually playing with. Yeah.
Like, I need to heavily clarify, none of these comments are directed at Emma whatsoever.
None of my comments are directed at anyone that I know that does podcasting.
Same here. This is directed at nobody. I actually I have a video that I was making for Emma just about like podcast etiquette and mic etiquette and like do's and don'ts and how to do things so that she could send it to people that she was going to be working with as, hey, try and do this for me. So that it was like a nice, easy, ready to go kind of thing.
Is that uploaded
I recorded
somewhere?
that back
Can people get access to that?
No, I recorded it in August and I just need to redo it. It's at the old apartment. I'm going to just reshoot it here and do a better job of it.
Yeah, when you do, you should release that. Like that should be a thing that we actually release, because that, like, I don't want to say we're experts by any means at this point, but like we have been doing this for 2.5 years now.
I don't want to say we're experts, but when it comes to the realm of home podcasting, there are some basic things that it's very easy for me to like.
I mean, no, your job,
local recording
your day
is a
job
huge
literally
thing.
Involves audio production and like,
that's
media,
also true.
So
yeah,
you
I
are
did manage
kind
to
of a
land that.
professional in the field.
A professional in the field, maybe not a professional in the knowledge, but in the field, boy howdy.
You are by definition, despite my years of schooling, you are by definition more of a fucking expert on this than I am, because
I feel like I'm like that English street kid who like gets confused for a prince. And you're the prince that got dropped in the gutter because you're like freelancing your work, and I'm like, yeah, somehow I landed a job in audio and video.
I mean,
thumbs up.
The simple answer is that the company you work for, I wouldn't.
That is also true.
That's
and we're not going to get into that anymore because we are maintaining the separation of work and home.
Poor choice of words.
Yep.
I thought you were going to say church and state.
He was absolutely going to say church and state.
I was. But anyway, back to what I was saying. But I still plan on putting that out someday because I think it's legitimately like, there are basic tips and tricks that you can do. None of this has anything to do with the D&D stuff anymore because a lot of that.
No, we're just talking general podcasting now.
Which one of you pointed out that it's like a trust between the players? That was you, Dan, and then Jeff mentioned knowing when to shut up. And like these are both two very important things.
Totally.
And knowing how to go with the flow. There
is an aspect of people. So you mentioned like learning people's personal flow, right? We talked about that a little bit, and I mentioned important. So like it is absolutely possible to record with people you've never recorded before. It is absolutely possible to record with people that you've never had a conversation with before. But having these baseline tips and tricks do a massive job of even building towards that flow right out the gate. And like, yes, trust between players and DM, but on a broader like podcast in general sense, trust between the host and the guest, or the host and the other hosts is huge. Like knowing that I can say, Noah, hold on, let me tell you about fucking how I'm going to derail this conversation right out the very beginning of the podcast. It's trust enough to know that, like, generally speaking, I have a reason for going in that direction, even if it's not a good one, and trusting that there is something that I'm trying to say and I'm not just blathering.
Yeah. Like, peek behind the curtain. We do attempt to sometimes for off the air, we try to plan what we're going to talk about. Sometimes.
Shh,
and then other times we sit down and slam a Red Bull and say, all right, let's record. And both methods are valid. Both methods
there's nothing
work.
Wrong with either of them.
But
the reason they work so well.
If there's a guest, I've had multiple people tell me it is very intimidating to guest on our podcast because we have a very tight flow of topic to topic, maintaining conversation. That's not a bad thing. That is very good for
it's something
us.
that I actually think is one of our best traits.
Yeah, you got a good rhythm with each other.
The only reason that we all work together is because we have that rhythm.
Unfortunately, when we bring in an outsider, that ends up falling apart.
I know which one you're thinking of.
Is it my mom? Because she's the one who I was specifically thinking. My mom and Carly. Shout out to both of them for saying it was scary to be on the podcast.
Oh, I meant like when that does go wrong. Like there's one that I'm thinking of that like we did kind of just talk over the guests the whole time. It's this one. Jeff, go fuck yourself.
Oh,
I don't remember what one you're talking about. I remember it happening.
The duo in person where we had Nina and Michelle. We pretty much talked over Michelle the entire episode.
We did do that. Oh, you're right.
And I only remember
it didn't end up sounding as bad after we were like 10 minutes into the episode. We calmed down, but man, it was rough at first.
Yeah, and then that's also is building that flow between different people. Like it's hard, and some people just aren't great in a podcast. Like that's okay too,
and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take that, Michelle.
I mean, that I get a little bit call out post, but like. Because Michelle didn't feel comfortable just interrupting people, made it harder for us to be on our podcast specifically.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just would it work better in an interview format podcast? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Michelle's great in interviews.
Because we're not going to be sitting here slamming energy drinks, talking about how stupid Star Wars is, while she's just sitting there being like, you may remember I said I've only seen one Star Wars.
You guys, I do have an update on that. Since that day, Michelle has now seen 3 Star Wars.
I thought I saw her watching with you, Brian, and Katie.
She also was very like out of it that day and trying to get other stuff done in the background. So I'm gonna have to make her rewatch episode 5 again. But she's now seen 4, 5, and Rogue One. Rogue One was her favorite because it is the least Star Wars of the Star Wars movies.
Go figure. Honestly, I've heard a lot of people say that people only like Rogue One because of the last 10 minutes.
No,
because
dude,
of the Vader scene.
It's a good war movie.
I loved Rogue One because it was a fun movie.
Yeah,
it was good.
It was finally a Star Wars without the Force in it. That's what I wanted.
I still don't understand why people hate on Solo. Solo's honestly one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I think
there's
so
some
fun.
Big flaws, but it's so fun.
Oh, absolutely,
it's fine.
But there's flaws in every Star Wars.
The fact that someone did have to remind them that Darth Maul did not have his double-bladed lightsaber anymore, was frightening.
That's very frightening. That is a whole nother conversation that we are hopefully out of that era.
He could build a new one.
But he already canonically had a different one.
Yeah, there's because he shows up in the TV show, and so somebody didn't check in with the TV show people and be like, "Hey, so this is happening," and then they were like, "Yeah, so here's where he's at so far as a character."
Wasn't Maul's actor who was like, "Why do I have this lightsaber?"
Yeah, he's great, by the way. He is like the biggest Star Wars nerd. It's so good.
I love the fact that
that's cool.
He, as a man who was just like supposed to be Maul's stunt performer, ended up taking the entire role because their original guy had to back out.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
it's really good. He's super chill from everything I've ever seen. He also like still has a lot of that like stunt energy, even though he's 20 years older now. Like he still works. I'm hugely impressed by him. He's a very cool guy. Would love to meet him someday.
That would be nice.
Not Star Wars talk. Back to what we were just talking about. Michelle. We were on podcast. Are we done with the podcast conversation? Have we finished riffing on?
That's about all I had to say.
How other podcasts are terrible.
25 minutes of me being angry about podcast people.
Podcast people are rough. And podcast people, like, the thing that I've found here and there is that, and it's one of the things that I kind of try to work against, at least in my own brain, is podcast people also get this really inflated sense of self-worth about their tiny audiences. Like we have a tiny audience, right? I think we only are at like 50 views of fucking 50 listens an episode on the high end.
Yeah.
But I don't sit here and pretend like we're
am I proud of every single like listen that we get?
100.
Am I like thrilled over the moon that we get more than 2 people listening to us? Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. I the fact that I have a friend of mine who can a couple of friends of mine who actively are like, "Hey, so you said this dumb shit on the podcast this week. Let me just tell you, get your fucking shit together." Like,
shout out to noted enemy of the podcast, Sam, for correcting all of our medical. Yeah, I think that's how that works, and various other things that are not nearly as unimportant as we would pretend them to be.
Exactly. Kesney as well. Kesney is also very good at like, will reach out and talk to me about whatever happened on the podcast this week. And like that's so cool. Fun. It's so cool. And like it's just a very neat experience. And I am entirely grateful for every single one of my fucking listeners, every single one. which is why it blows my mind when every now and again I'll talk to somebody who actually has a little bit bigger, and like they get so up their own ass so fast, and I don't know why.
It's like, oh, our podcast has over 200 weekly listeners. I'm like, that's really cool, but that's not like, you're not the McElroys. You can calm down.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sliding.
That's part of the reason that I deliberately make sure that I don't know how many listens Casual Obsession gets, so that I can't get an attitude about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad play, to be honest.
Actually, it's just laziness, but like, you know.
Jeff not logging into the app. Yeah, I intentionally don't look this up because I just
believe that it's. I believe that it's bad for me, and
I'm
the
the most
podcast
humble
as a
person
whole.
you've ever met.
It makes me the better podcaster.
I'm not saying that I'm better than the other three hosts, but I am saying that I'm better than the other three hosts.
The people's podcaster. The Pogcaster.
Power to the people's podcaster. Fuck, that's terrible.
Champ.
You are. Okay, you can be my little pod champ.
Now that's podcasting.
That's what I call podcasting music. Terrible all the way down.
That went on like 2 jokes too long, and I just don't know what to do with it.
That is also ironically what we talk about on the podcast, about jokes that go on for 2 jokes too long. No, I don't know. It weirds me out when people get weirdly like self up their own ass about anything. Fucking Twitch viewers, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like humility is what is like a good thing. Like there are people who absolutely deserve to have a little bit of pride in what they do, but also like, I don't know, man, just be cool. Like you're just some guy.
Just, like, maybe don't.
Mm-hmm. Like at the end of the day, we're all just some guy on the internet, and like we don't have to be that up our own ass about the work we do. Exactly. As much as I enjoy being up my own ass about the work I do, let me make that very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just
on that front, I do think it's really cool that there are so many smaller podcasts right now, because I kind of feel like the more available content creation becomes to the masses, the more we start to get away from the like how do I phrase this? That shitty like boomer 15 minutes of fame concept, you know? I feel like we, as everything becomes a little more equal in media content production, you know, we keep getting further away from that, and we keep getting closer and closer to there just being a bunch of like lower levels of fame, you know?
Yeah.
And
that's fun.
That's really cool.
I kind of had this realization this week when I was looking at I was just like scrolling my Instagram, and I saw just how many comments there were on a post by Ben Eller, who is a guy that I was a fan of from his YouTube stuff for a couple of years before I got into his podcast, which is Dead and Lovely. It's a horror movie podcast that is so part of the inspiration for the fact that me and Noah have one.
And they ironically put out the week after us the exact same movie, the week after our first episode.
And they totally weren't copying us at all.
Yeah. But, just because they were going longer, they think they can get away with that shit. Fight me, Hollywood Steve. You and your wonderful nickname.
But I was looking at that, and I was just thinking, like, this guy has impacted, like, not to go too far with this, but like this guy has impacted my life an awful lot just by like putting phrases into my vocabulary, you know? Like there are certain things that I didn't used to say that I now do say because of him. And I feel like since he's like, you know, sort of a big deal on the internet, but not really, you know, kind of the,
as far as YouTube musicians go,
YouTube subscribers kind of level, you know, we're like,
he's no Rob Scallon, he's no Jared Dines, but he's still like
on the street. You mention him to anybody on the street and they've got no idea who he is, but he does have a sizable enough following.
Yeah. And music people know who he is.
I'm so much more ready to commit to be committed to being a fan of like him and his content, and to have that be like kind of a part of my personality in a way. Like I'm so much more ready to be that level of fan for him than I am for like any larger content creator, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you feel like you can connect to him.
Yeah.
Well, and if, depending on the size, like you can. There's a guy on YouTube who I reached out to when I was in college and was just like, hey, he does major to minor covers. Like that's his whole shtick. But rather than doing covers, he does actual like he actually he doesn't just transpose it. He also like will do generally like some different instruments and does like basically a full. I don't even want to call it a remix because it's not
just to flip the vibe over.
Yeah, he just flips the vibe completely. Yeah. And I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, he only has maybe a couple 100,000. I was like, hey, I'm in college. I want to use one of your songs and I want to make a video around it because I'm in college for film. I think it'd be really cool to do as a class project. You know, is that okay? And literally, like within the day, he got back to me like, dude, fucking go for it. Just send it to me when you're done. And you couldn't do that with when I was much younger. I did the same thing for a different YouTuber who's much, much bigger, and they just ignored it. And because they don't have, like, obviously nobody has to respond to me. I'm some guy that just reached out to you out of nowhere. But it definitely means that you can have a little bit more of a personal relationship with the smaller the fame. And like that parasocial relationship becomes.
And they're gonna tweet back to you.
Exactly. That parasocial relationship becomes much less parasocial by just the nature of that's how it works over time. Like over time, you can actually make. I could be friends with certain people on the internet just by being part of their community for long enough and hanging out with them. They'll recognize like you. That's how a lot of moderate or large size Twitch people get their mods. Is they just either it's a friend. Like all of my mods right now are friends, but absolutely I know of people who've been like, hey, this guy's just been watching me for 6 years now or whatever. He's always been chill. He's a mod now.
Yeah.
And like that doesn't happen when you get to like PewDiePie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was actually specifically a guy I was thinking of because, you know, not to date myself, but he's someone I followed before he hit 100,000, like way back in the day.
In the before times.
Yeah,
really? No one knew about him before he was cool.
I mean, not to be that guy, but yeah, legit, because a friend of mine was like, hey, I found this guy. He's actually really funny. And then, you know, the dude exploded and I never interacted with his stuff. There's no reason that he would ever know my username or anything stupid like that. Right. But like the fact that I like, it's interesting to just know that things like that like can happen, but like you can actually end up forming some sort of whack relationship with these like people as long as they don't like rise to this level of, well, the average person is not in their circle of knowledge anymore. And I think that's really surreal, is that you can become a big enough deal that like, and I mean, I feel I want to just a second. Let me recollect my thoughts here on this one. I don't support him anymore. I think he's a little out there. I think a lot of the things that he's tried to do are actually legitimately neat. I think the fact that he donates so much to charity is a very cool thing. Sure. I think he doesn't know where to draw the line though.
He could stand to be less racist.
Yeah. No, there's some lines he crosses and he doesn't have to. He could stop, but he doesn't. And I don't know.
Man, that's such a weird way to say that Noah supports racists.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not is the thing, but you know, it's.
I can't believe I'm not going to continue this bit. I'm going to stop it because.
But then the flip side is like people who are already established, but like dead and lovely. I followed them because I saw Jeff interacting with them, and I'm like, I need to listen to that podcast. So I followed them, and I start listening to the podcast, and I start interacting with them. They followed me back like very quickly after I started interacting. And it's not like they follow everyone back. They just follow people who interact with them. And I think that's really fun. It's a neat way to build a community.
They'll just like one of my completely unrelated tweets.
Literally same here. And it throws me off in such a big way. I'll make some post about socialism and then I get a little like, and I'm like, oh, that's neat. It's like Nina with Chris Raygun, who never interacts with her art in the slightest, but she posts like a personal update and then he'll like it. They're mutuals because she reached controversial figure, Chris Ray Gun. Yes, whatever. Moving on from that. They're mutuals on Twitter because she reached out to him about like a merch deal and that ended up falling through, but they're still mutuals on Twitter.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting to me, the wild directions that online relationships can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still such a new thing as well that like I feel like people still aren't. There's no etiquette for it, right? Which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we're kind of going into an age where I think that there's going to be a little bit of like etiquette to it. But like for the longest time, they're fuck it, dude. If you like someone's content, just reach out and say, "Hey, liked your shit." Like that was a thing we could be for the longest time, and it's harder to do now. But it's still there. It still happens.
That's one of the things that I like a lot about like Dead Meat. I've talked about them a lot, but they have the podcast email set up. That's another guy I've been following since the low numbers, but he was the single thousands because I found him on his first upload on Reddit.
Wild. Okay, then.
It was wild. It was such a good time. I saw his upload and I'm like, self-promoting scum. And then I saw his second upload and I'm like, oh, he's doing a thing with this and people aren't mad about it. Okay, I'll check him out.
Amazing.
Oh, he's consistent. I see.
Exactly. Like consistency wins me over. But yeah, they have their podcast email is set up. So they're like, hey, if you want to like tell us things, we most likely will never respond to you, but we do read all of the emails and we appreciate what we get. So every now and then.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I just, you saw that he did it once and you were like, this guy sucks. And then you saw that he did the exact same thing a second time and you were okay with it suddenly.
Well, yeah, because I thought it was just like, I thought I saw this already. Oh, this is 2. Oh, okay. They let him in twice. Maybe I'll give him a chance. But yeah.
I can't think of anything else that I would like see and be annoyed by, but then like completely change my tune on it when I saw it happen a second time.
No, that's super valid. But yeah,
like some guy leaves an annoying comment on something and you're like, well, he sucks, he's clearly just a dick, but then he leaves the same kind of comment on a different post and you're like, it's a bit, I get it.
I mean, I've had that happen before. There's like parody accounts on Twitter that I follow because I thought, wow, what an asshole, and then I'm like, 3-year Letterman is a meme account.
Wild.
But yeah,
it's just weird.
I reach out to the email every now and then and just tell them that I appreciate what they're doing because they're literally one of my favorite podcasts. They're just a really good time. And I don't know. I like that we still are in a time when it's okay to interact. It's the expectation thing, I think, right? The expectation of return interaction cannot be there. And then it's not weird, I think.
Yeah, because then it's essentially you're sending fan mail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like being able to do that. I think that that's very enjoyable. I think that that's nice. I hope we don't hit a point where that's no longer socially acceptable because I personally know that I would love to receive someone saying a nice thing to me. Which is why it's dead wild to me that people are in this chat every now and then in the off the air thing talking about, hey, that was a fun episode. That makes my day. Not to beg for interaction. I'm trying not to.
Podcast in the Discord, right?
Well, it does surprise me. But like, I hope that we don't hit a point to wrap up so Dan can finish. I hope we don't hit a point where that's no longer okay because I just think, old man that I am, I think that that's a really fun, wholesome thing to do. Dan, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, speaking of nice things, you know where my favorite place to get nice things said about the podcast is?
Where is it, Dan?
It's
your mom's house.
It's on iTunes, Noah.
It is on iTunes.
You don't want to talk about the podcast in my mom's house. I don't know that she knows it exists, so we can keep it that way. Thank you very much.
Absolutely keeping it that way.
Everybody, send your fan mail to Dan's mom at.
The reason we had Noah's
Dan's mom.
We would not believe what your son said today. On what he calls a podcast. He calls it a podcast.
A podcast, if you would believe it.
He calls it a podcast.
I can't believe it's not podcasting. But no, on iTunes. No, tell them all about the iTunes thing.
Well, if you go to iTunes and you look up Off the Air Podcast And then
Don't they call it Apple Music now?
It's Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Apple Music. So you go to Apple Podcasts and then you find Off the Air. I don't know why we only have our most recent 100 episodes, because other podcasts don't have that problem. And I'm going to act like I haven't figured out how to fix it yet, but it's actually just because I have not taken the time to figure out how to fix it yet. Anyway, someday we'll have them all up there, but you can look us up, give us a 5-star review, say something nice there. We'll read it out loud. There's nothing new right now, but boy, howdy. If we get a 14th review, I'm going to read it out. We don't have 14 written reviews. We have 14 star reviews, and one of them's a 1-star. Fuck you, buddy. What was that?
Wow. What's his problem?
We're not that bad. Well, I'll accept a 3 or a 4-star review just fine. I don't think that there are not many things in my life that are consistently put out, for example, that I think are a 1-star piece of content.
You know what? That's fair.
I can't imagine listening to something and disliking it so much that I had to leave a negative review.
I don't even do that for like bad food.
No, it's just like, well, okay, I won't do that again.
Damn, now you got me feeling like a grumpy old man, because I do things like that, but they have to it has to be like, if it's a piece of content on the internet that has a dislike option, I'll dislike and move on. I'm never going to go back to it.
Yeah.
Bon appetit.
Right, you're never angry enough to write a note that says 2 barbers. Why not take vacations at different times?
Exactly. Man, I love that.
Throwback.
But Bon Appetit got canceled hardcore. What, am I going to go out here and petition that no one listen to them again? No, I disliked their newest upload. I unsubscribed because I forgot they existed. They were gone for so long, and then they came back with everything they're doing, so I moved on. But if they had a podcast, I'm not going to go review bomb their podcast.
Damn, maybe we should. Maybe we should just review bomb people. Are we allowed to say that? Is that inciting violence?
I'm pretty sure that is actually. I think it's a crime, actually.
I know it's banned by Twitch terms of service. You absolutely can't do that on Reddit or Twitch.
Good. Thank goodness we can stop having internet mobs form to be mean to people for no reason.
Yeah, you are absolutely.
Gosh, what else are people gonna do on Reddit?
No. Now you can. That can still happen. It just can't be.
You're just not allowed to.
It can't be an intentional vote brigade. Like, you can't intentionally be like, this person specifically, he can go fuck himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of Twitter, did you say Twitter? Did I say Twitter?
Nope.
Did someone say Twitter?
Twitter was in
Twitter.
my head for
Twitch.
a reason. I said Twitch and Reddit.
Okay. I got something to tell you about Twitter off screen or off air, but if you want to go to Twitter at the Off the Air, you can follow us, and sometimes we tweet that the episode's live. Sometimes I remember to log in and try to interact with people too, but that does not happen as often. And that's it. Jeff, do you have anything you want to plug? We'll let our guests plug their socials, I suppose.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Bubba Wubbadab. You can find me on Instagram at The Hammer of Jeff. I'm in the Discord if you want to talk to me about powerlifting. I love talking about powerlifting. But let's be real, you probably skipped through the first 20 minutes of the podcast just to get away from that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to plug our other podcast, if that's all right.
Wow, you're a little needy right now, but I guess go for it.
Go listen to the Casual Obsession Horror Podcast. I'm going to give you a little teaser for this upcoming episode. This drops on Thursday, right?
Yeah. So
when this comes out, if you just wait for this coming Saturday,
2 days from now,
we're going to be doing our Crimson Peak episode, and I'm going to give you a little off-the-air exclusive sneak peek. Other co-hosts of the podcast really liked the movie, and when I watched it, I didn't.
Damn.
So there's going to be discussion about that.
Here, my sneak peek for you is I liked it way more the second time I watched it than the first time.
Huh. Okay.
So watch it again before we're recording an hour, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think that's it for today, isn't it?
Sure. Bye.
I guess so.
Cool. Thanks for coming out, Jeff. It was nice having you here.
It was actually really nice having you.
It's been fun.
Good to hang.
Yeah, I've had a great time. So
now we'll never have him back again.
Oh wait, you guys don't do that on this show.